Hello and welcome to another Works Plus Tech Talk podcast. It's just going to be Josh and I today having a bit of a chat about new machinery, how to adapt, and where to go from there. So, Joshy, on my travels these past few weeks, you know what I've been seeing a lot of?
I'd say concrete grinding people.
Oh, excellent guess. And yes, you are correct. But what I was actually referring to is I'm seeing a lot of new machinery out there. Seeing a lot of the 690s, the 830s, some of the converted HTCs that are now painted orange. But what I'm coming across a lot with a few customers is adapting from the old style machinery that's been around since the 90s, the King Concepts designs, to the new designs that we're seeing now, which have been brought out fully sealed units, higher weights, different electrical components. I'm not too sure. I'm not a mechanic, but how does the concrete grinder go from old machinery to new machinery and keep the same productivity, if not more, but adapting their process to that? Because it's not just as clear cut as just whacking the same diamonds on from your old machine onto your new one, is it?
Well, you can. They're interchangeable, but there's a few things to consider, of course. When moving from one machine to the other, the main differences that you're going to notice going from, let's say, a Gen 1 King Concepts or Husqvarna machine to the new generation is mostly going to be weight. That's the biggest factor. The two machines have considerably different construction and therefore very, very different weight categories. And they also come with weight kits on them as well. So the originals never came with weight kits. And now the new generation also has additional weights. And they're not fixed either. So they're a dynamic weight system. They can be back, they can be neutral, they can be forward. So that changes a lot of things.
Okay, so how does because you mentioned the original King Concepts designs didn't have the weight kits on there. So why would we have the weight kits put on there? What kind of benefits, if any, does that have?
Well, as far as benefits is concerned, that's debatable. As far as benefits is concerned. And I'm assuming that we're talking to people right now who are going, I love my weight kit. And then I know that we've got people who are, I took those things off. Now, we've always advocated, trying to create your weight mix by basically, choosing the surface area of diamonds that you've got under the machine to get the weight. That would mean having to carry more tools. I guess having a weight kit is one way that you could push for additional performance out of a tool. That's so it's not a bad thing. It's very, very. If we're talking about the second generation Husqvarna, you can certainly see the influence of the HTC design because they've had weights on them for a long time. So you can really see that influence in the design on the new generation of the Husqvarna stuff. So I think there's a couple of reasons why you would have weights also that I can see purely just from an 830 has got more horsepower than the old machine, already has more weight, but it's got a fairly robust electronic system. So it's got a lot of torque. And, if you're polishing also, you would, or honing, throwing the weight kit forward would certainly be beneficial to you if you could keep the temperature under control. All got to do with whatever it is, the material that you're working on, internal, external, all those factors for heat. But if you can keep the temperature under control and put the weight on, then you can potentially increase your output.
Okay, so what kind of diamond selection would I be looking at with my weights all the way forward? Obviously, it's hard to tell when you're not on the slab, and every slab's different. But sort of what am I going to be looking at to try and get as much productivity as possible? I know you're a fan of singles. I'm a fan of doubles, but what exactly am I going to be looking for to try and get the most productivity out of my tooling with my weights forward?
Well, there's always going to be this limiting factor, right? We say that the more weight that you've got on the tool, the faster it's going to cut. But that's not always the case. You think of a 30 grit segment. It's got a surface area that's filled with X amount of 30 grit diamond particles. And you can load it up with a particular amount of weight, and then you can spin it. Okay, machine is now in run. And you go, well, if I put more weight on it, then it cuts faster. But that is only to a point, because the diamond particle is only going to put an impression in the material that it's cutting that is as deep as the diamond particle itself. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So if we put more weight on it, but the RPM is the same, and we've already reached the maximum depth without the weights, putting the weights down is not going to change the outcome very much, because the RPM remains the same. So if we're not changing the RPM, but we're increasing the weight, and it's already cutting at its maximum capacity, all that you're going to do is introduce more heat. And that would actually reduce your performance.
Yeah, increase the chance of tooling glazing up, and yeah.
So you're not really going to get anything extra out of your tool in that scenario. But like I said, that's if it is already working at optimum performance. Sometimes the way to get optimum performance out of the tool is actually to increase the weight. Hence, I like to run single 30s instead of doubles. But if you apply the same thought process to having the optimum amount of weight on a full set of double 30s, if you've got optimum down pressure on that set, every revolution theoretically is going to give you twice the amount of stock removal. That's a nice scenario to be able to engage whenever you feel like it.
Absolutely.
I might start supporting our listeners who used up full sets of double 30s.
Oh, that's going to be a very, very strange day.
I'm not promising anything.
No? Yeah, I know I've copped it from you using doubles, so I'm looking forward to that apology someday. So, Joshy, we've talked about second generation 830. What about the 690? If I'm looking to get my first cut, full exposure, I want to do the donut, grind down, what kind of factors am I looking at? Because I have heard that this machine is a bit more complex.
Yep. Compared
to the 830. So what am I looking at there with a few factors?
Yeah, 690 is an interesting one because previous iterations, the first generation, the 680 and the 820 were electronically the same. The 680 was about 100 kilos lighter, or a bit less than that, but about 100 kilos lighter. And the main noticeable difference between those machines outside of the weight was the RPM was higher on the 680 simply due to the ratio of the pulleys. So it ran at a higher RPM. The biggest thing that you'll notice as a difference between the 830 and the 690 is the horsepower difference. They don't have the same horsepower.
But they've got the same size discs, right?
Yeah, they have the same size discs. So the 680 used to have a smaller disc than the 820 had on it. Now you've got the 690 and it's got the discs from a 820 on it or from an 830, right? So in order to turn that disc in the first place, you're going to need more torque. So typically, if you want more torque, we go for more horsepower. And if we add more weight to a machine, the way to get the most out of it, to be able to put that, to get a return on your horsepower, so to get a return on your weight is to have more horsepower. Otherwise, you don't get a return on the weight. The new machine doesn't have more horsepower. Like the 830, it actually just has the same as the standard 680. So it's not an upgrade as far as that's concerned. It's just got more weight. So it's got more weight on it. as a starting point without the weights down, has less horsepower, and then it has bigger discs on it. So it takes more horsepower to turn bigger discs, takes more horsepower to turn discs with more weight on them, but with the same amount of horsepower.
You're running out of horses here.
Correct. So purely just from that perspective, you've also got to go, all right, so what's my starting point? What are going to be my limitations here? If it's got enough horsepower to turn those discs all day long, then, happy days. But what we've seen is that they're pretty much under-spec'd horsepower-wise for the weight. And I say that, there's a caveat on what I say there, because that's what we're experiencing predominantly here in Australia. And I know from experience that these types of machines run better on 480 volts than they do on 415. And here in Australia, we're running on 415. And when you're talking about getting as much torque to the diamond tool, the cleaner the power you've got, the better it's going to put it to the ground. But if you're already starting with 415 instead of 480, you're a long way behind the 8-ball. So we've got a heavier machine that needs a lot more torque to run it, but it doesn't have the horsepower. So when we're running a 690, we've got to consider a few things to get the maximum productivity out of it. You're probably going to be looking at running more segments, like the scenario we spoke about before, running the full set of doubles and increasing the RPM so that each revolution you do, you're generating more material removal. More dust is more material removal. So if you've got the weight balance right, and you've halved the down pressure because you've got full set of segments, full set of doubles under there, then every revolution you're probably going to get the most out of it. In the past, we would have gone, load the thing up with weight. So that would mean dropping segments, running singles, increasing the down pressure, and just leaning into it. Hence, we went with big blocks and that sort of stuff, just putting more weight and more power into them. You don't really have that available in this machine. So you've got to look at it a different way. We've got less horsepower, so we're going to have to rely more on RPM. The good thing is with those bigger discs on it, the diamonds are traveling over more surface area as well per revolution, which is kind of a bonus. So you just need to look at it differently. That means that you're going to be running it at higher RPM because you need to make up for the fact that you don't have the weight on it. So you run it at higher RPM, and that'll, you're going to be looking for that thermal comfort zone, if you like, for the tool, which you're not going to hit its max that much running a full set of doubles compared to running a full set of singles. But if you ran a full set of singles, you wouldn't have the horsepower to push it that hard anyway. That's what we're seeing.
Okay. Interesting. So in terms of my weight kit on my 690, where would I be putting that? Just straight forward, and as we've talked about with the doubles, let the doubles take care of the surface area and the heat factor?
I'd probably leave the weights in the truck or in the trailer.
Just completely off the machine?
To
Put
be
them on the shelf?
To be totally honest with you, and I'm not being facetious, but I am. I just don't think, I don't personally think that there's enough horsepower in that machine to justify having the weights. There's already a lot of weight in that machine, a lot more than the predecessor, and you've only got the same amount of available horsepower. The drives in them are, they're new generation drives. The previous model, so previous generation machines had, those drives, the old Varcon drives are getting on for 30 years. So you get much better power out of the new generation, as you'd expect, but it's not enough to overcome the shortage of horsepower without really good clean power going to it, at least anyway. So there's a lot more weight already in the machine, and you're probably going to be more inclined to use that weight kit to take weight off the head than to actually load it up with weight. So when I say I'd leave the weight kit off the machine, it's because you would probably simplify your life by not having them on there.
Not to make it, and not to mention make it easier to get around on site as well with that little bit extra weight taken off.
Yeah.
Talking about voltage, and you said it was more comfortable working at about 480. Is that something that I could easily fix, taking it off house power and just running it straight off generator and running it 480? Or how does that work, Josh? I'm not too familiar with generators and power and so forth, but is that something that's an easy fix just by, well, not necessarily easy because we're towing something extra with us, but is that something that I could fix just by having a generator with me and not relying on 415 volts coming from house power, but bringing my own power with me?
It's difficult. You certainly can do it, but you'd have to have you'd have to understand that you'd be going for a dedicated generator to run that machine. So you can get not all generators, but you could, theoretically you can get a generator, and a generator service center could crank the voltage up, change the frequency, and you'd be running on 480, which would be fine for your grinder. It would be fine for your dust extractor as well, particularly if you're running a 55T. I'm not going to speak for any other brands because I don't know them and I don't want to destroy other people's equipment. But yeah, you could get a generator, pump 480 into it, and expect to get better performance out of your grinder and even your dust extractor. But you couldn't plug your single phase Aussie spec hand grinders. You could probably put your toaster on it. That would be all right. Just be expected to happen a whole lot faster.
Yeah, it's a quick toast.
Sandwich maker. Don't use the microwave on it. But you would be running at high voltage across the board, so you wouldn't be able to run all of your Australian appliances off of it.
Okay, interesting.
And expect to get a warranty still.
Oh, Josh, so we've talked about upping your generator.
Yep.
And that sort of thing. How practical is that though?
It's not very practical. Certainly not very common, but not very practical in Australia.
Yeah. So what should we be doing then to increase the productivity of the 690?
I think the most practical starting point is to give consideration to the weight. So most of our tooling per segment has been made in such a way that the expected down pressure on that is going to be between 22 to 28 kilograms. So that's where somewhere in that range is where you're going to get the broadest application windows. And when I say broadest application windows, it gives you the capacity to have the widest range of RPMs. Because when you start to have more weight, it increases the heat. And that means that we've got less capacity to push the RPM up. So the first thing to consider is, okay, I had a 680 before, and a full set of singles is probably going to be around about that 22, 28 kilogram range. I'm just going to a 690 now, increasing my down pressure a lot. So you're probably going to go, well, the closest balance is going to be for me to do a half set of singles, a half set of doubles, probably somewhere around there. And I haven't done the maths. So I'm shooting from the hip. But that's probably the starting point, is just going, okay, if I want something to run similar to what I'm used to, then the best thing to do would work out the down pressure, and that would be your starting point to adapt to a new machine, try and make it similar to the old one. And you've got the extra the additional speed per RPM on the 690. So you would just start with basically like a 70% of what you would in the past, run it like that, and then start dialing in a bit more speed as you wish. If what you see coming out the back is similar to what you used to, tools aren't getting hot, you're leaving a good aggressive profile behind the machine, I'd say crank it up.
Crank that puppy up.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So in terms of what's coming out the back of the machine, measurables. So what am I going to be looking for to compare how I'm going with the new machine versus what I'm used to with the old machine, if I'm even used to the old style machine?
Yeah. So if we're doing first cut, so stock removal, that's the easiest starting point for me, because stock removal is generating dust. So hopefully everyone's been monitoring their performance with their old machine and knows what their average dust capsulation is every 15 minutes or so, and they know what that looks like. And that would be my yardstick. I'd be like, well, if I'm doing 10-minute bags with my 680, when I get to my 690, I want to find that 10-minute bag range zone. And if I can get better than that, then that's what I'm pushing for. I mean, I just bought a new machine. I want to go faster than my old one did. What was the point of investing if I'm not getting a return on my time?
Yeah, exactly. So what would you take, Josh, if you were to buy a machine today?
If I was to buy a machine today, can we talk about this one off air?
Yeah, we'll cut it there. Just kidding. No, I want to hear it.
Look, personally, I would be going for a 680 RC over the 690. The 830, I think, is a ball terror. That thing's got some really some kick-ass productivity with the bigger motor and the electronic drives on that thing. Yeah, they're good. They, same motor on an 820 with Varcon drives, they won't keep up. So that new generation computer, yeah, I'm a big fan of that. The 690, however, I wish they had just kept it like the old version, old generation. 680 and 820 had the same electronics, same amount of horsepower. I think that would have been great to carry over into the 690. So unfortunately, as they didn't, I'd be going for a 680. Big block, of course.
Naturally.
Yes. That would be my preference for generating the most amount of dust. And of course, we did a grind challenge a little while ago, and we actually had a 690 that we did a big block conversion on as well, where we saw a little bit of improvement on the bags. And you can see that in our Instagram profile, but I'm assuming that someone's going to throw it in here. There you go. See?
Thanks, Liam. He'll edit that in there.
So that's a pretty serious difference between productivity of a 680 and a 690 big blocks, both of them big blocks. So I can't really argue with the numbers. I like the look of the 690. I'd rather rock up on site with something that looks pretty and new. But at the end of the day, that's what do we go to work for?
Yeah, you're not getting paid for looks. Well, not all of us. At least you've got Instagram famous or an OnlyFans, and maybe.
Yeah, so that's not me anymore. I'd have to go for the higher producing machine.
You're a pretty good looking rooster, mate. We can talk about those calves again and sell calf pics.
We're going to have to do this off air. Was getting harassed by this one.
Oh, Josh. So that's that machine.
Yep.
680s are like gold now, especially the RCs, trying to find them.
Yep.
So if I'm shopping for a machine today,
yeah,
what factors and what, from price to ability, what am I looking for? What am I looking for to get a machine that's going to help me be as productive as possible and get me on and off site as quickly as possible and money in my account as quickly as possible? Because that's what we're here for at the end of the day.
Well, first of all, it doesn't matter what machine that you buy, how productive it is. If you buy a machine and it doesn't have support, either from after sales support or it doesn't have, you can't get parts. Those are machines you don't want to be interested in anyhow. Best machine without any parts is not making any money.
Yeah.
All right. So outside of that, if you found the right company to support you, look, I'll be looking at power. I'll be looking at weight, direction of cut. I like same direction. I like dual drive, and just the weight, power, weight, RPM is what I'd be looking at, and because they all determine how fast you're going to generate dust, and dust is productivity.
Beautiful. And productivity is
money in the pocket. Hopefully, if you're selling yourself right.
Absolutely. I think that's a podcast for another time.
Oh, but that's what I want to talk about. That's what you dragged me in on.
Selling? Are you?
Yeah, you told me. That's what you said to me. Well, I just want to have a little section here where I've got to ask you a couple of questions about something that's not very important, and then we'll talk about the stuff that you love.
Well, I've got to get you in the chair somehow, Josh. You're a busy man.
Ripped off.
Well, thanks heaps for your time, Josh, and answering our questions. And a big thank you to the guys that I've seen on site, because these questions come from our customer base, which has been awesome. And keep them coming, because, we want to talk about what you guys are interested in. So
Absolutely.
Thank you again, Josh, and looking forward to the next podcast. But tune in, guys. Apple, Spotify, YouTube. Let us know if you need to listen on anything else. We'll speak to you soon.
Thanks, Brando.
Thanks, Joshy.
This show is proudly supported by Works Plus. Works Plus brings total solutions to all concrete grinding and polishing contractors to make it totally work for their daily operations. We hope you've enjoyed this show. Make sure to tune in each week, where we're going to dive deep into all things related to concrete grinding and polishing. We're here to help you so that you can boost your outcomes on the floor.